Have you ever found yourself in an intimate or romantic relationship, and what you came to realize, and it didn't take you very long to realize, that there were some personality differences that were creating some issues in your relationship? I think at some point in time or another, that's probably happened to many of us, and that's what we're talking about tonight. Personality differences in your romantic and, i.e., intimate relationship, and how to deal with it, right? One of the things that is becoming more and more apparent to me almost every single day is that folks are arguing and fussing and fighting about everything under the sun. And what became clear to me is a big part of these issues that people are having in their relationships is connected to the negative impact of the differences in their personalities. So, for some of you, you might be introverted, your partner is extroverted. You might be assertive, your partner might be passive. You might consider yourself to be religious or spiritual, and your partner is not. You might be a physically active person, and your partner is more sedentary and just sort of, comfortable being a homebody or just chilling, not doing a whole lot of anything. You may be somebody that really, really, really loves various genres of music or a particular genre of music, but your partner is not into the type of music that you're into, or they're totally okay sitting in silence. You might be a sports enthusiast and your partner is not. You might be someone who prides yourself on operating in your day-to-day life, in every aspect of your life, from a place of morality, and quite frankly, your partner engages in some immoral behaviors. You might tend to be argumentative and combative, and your partner is conflict avoidant or placates. You might be somebody who's extremely affectionate and has a high emotional intelligence, and your partner is unaffectionate and has low emotional intelligence. The list can go on and on and on, and how these different in your personality traits can be impacting the relationship. So I want you to think about that, because a lot of times, and you've heard me say time and time again, folks are arguing and fussing and fighting about stuff that when you take a close look at it, it's really the smoke screen and mirrors. It's the camouflage within the relationship that's not giving you an authentic view of what's really going on in the relationship that's problematic. So when you have these personality differences and you're not even completely clear on the fact that these personality issues exist, it can cause some deep-seated conflicts in your relationship. So when we look at some things that can really have a deep impact, a lasting impact that can really be the source of major discord within your relationship. And I gave you some examples, but I want to tease them out a little bit. So you may have different communication styles, right? You may be somebody, and you hear this a lot. Oh, goodness gracious, you hear it a lot. Men often say that women are extremely emotional, and men aren't emotional creatures. Their affect is flat. They don't express emotion unless it's anger or rage. And because you have these differences, or your communication style could be screaming, yelling, hooping, hollering, cussing, and fussing, but you could be in a relationship with somebody that doesn't want to hear all of that. They don't want to hear all of that because they grew up in all of that, and they said that they didn't want to experience that in adulthood. Or maybe they didn't grow up in that, and that's just not how they choose to communicate effectively. Maybe they don't have the same level of issues that you have, or they don't make sense of things the way that you make sense of things. So your partner may be capable of speaking to be understood and listening to understand, whereas you're communicating from the perspective of listening to be heard, or excuse me, speaking to be heard and listening to respond. Major conflict can arise when you have these communication style differences. And what happens in those cases is you now have problem solving and resolving conflict because you're not listening. You're not listening. You are communicating in ineffective ways that are exacerbating the personality differences that you all have. Another major one that I want to put on your radar is, and many of you have heard a lot about this, right? Love languages. Dr. Gary Chapman's 5 love languages. And you can take the assessment online, or you can buy the books and do the assessments in the books. But if you were to put it in simple language, how you each have learned to give and receive love prior to coming together in a relationship, and now that you're in a relationship with your partner, you're not on the same page with how you give and receive love. And what ends up happening is you end up experiencing more conflict and more negative intensity in your relationship because, you hear me say it all the time, right? We're not communicating about the things that we need to be communicating about. And oftentimes, what's also going on behind the scenes as it relates to your love language is that you are not as self-aware as you should be. So one of the questions that comes up when I'm working with couples is, when I assess their submissions from intake, I will ask them, what example have you had of a positive, healthy, fulfilling, and sustainable romantic relationship? And too often times, my couples, one or both, will convey to me that they haven't had a positive example. Well, what that suggests is that if you grew up and you didn't have any positive examples around you, or your only positive examples were actors on TV shows, then there's room for growth there. There's room for you to heighten your awareness, to own the fact that, you know what, I don't know how to be a healthy, loving, fulfilling partner. I have some idea, but I haven't necessarily put it into practice. Because oftentimes, what do people do? They replicate the negative behaviors that they saw growing up. Well, the problem with that is that's not going to serve you well. And it's going to yield the same results, if not worse results, as what you saw growing up. And my question to you is, wouldn't you love to experience more and different and better than some of those negative relationships that you were exposed to growing up? Another one is huge. Your value systems. What a lot of people don't understand is that there is a relationship between your value system and your emotional self. This is what I mean by that. People are real quick to say, oh, somebody made you angry or somebody teed you off or whatever the case may be. But my encouragement to you will always be to learn how to put your finger on the pulse of your raw, authentic emotions. Get behind the smoke screen and mirrors of your anger or of your rage, and learn to figure out what's the real emotion that you're experiencing. Is it embarrassment? Is it shame? Is it humiliation? You have to learn how, male or female, you have to learn how to connect with your emotional self. And then you have to understand the relationship between your emotional self and your value system. This is what it looks like. If someone dishonors your value of respect, you're not just angry, you feel disrespected. And that dishonor of your value of respect is going to result in a negative emotional experience. dependent upon the magnitude and the length of time that someone dishonors your value is going to result in that negative emotional experience morphing on you, and it turns into emotional pain. And it's in that level of emotional pain, particularly prolonged emotional pain, that can result in eroding the integrity, health, strength, and sustainability of your relationship. In contrast, though, when your values are honored, that lends itself to positive emotional experiences. Positive emotional experiences lend themselves to healthier, more fulfilling, and sustainable relationships. So you have to be able to understand the relationship between your emotional self and your value system. And when you do that, that actually will be instrumental in helping you to have a more authentic relationship with self and a more authentic relationship within your intimate, i.e. romantic relationship. You've got to be able to go beyond the superficial. If I asked you, what do you value? You could rattle off 3, 4, 5 things to me. But if I asked you 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 times, what do you value? It's probably going to make you uncomfortable. Excuse me. Because we live in a global society that oftentimes teaches us that it's okay to be superficial. When you've grown accustomed to navigating life superficially, it can become uncomfortable for you to start navigating life more authentically. And that's my encouragement to you. Don't be afraid to navigate life authentically. Don't be afraid to navigate life unapologetically. Be willing to learn who you truly are at your core. Be willing to learn, for those of you that are believers, be willing to get in tune with, get connected to, get intimately acquainted with who God purposed and predestined you to be. And then ask yourself, is my value system, is my moral compass, is my behavior in my relationship and in life reflective of the God that I say that I love, of the God that I say that I want to serve? That's your choice to make, right? So you have to look at how your personality differences can be instrumental in causing you to clash, because the real issue at the root is your value systems are different. I also want you to take into consideration your functioning style. One of the things that I often say to my clients is you have to take a look at, and I look at it systemically. In other words, we're all a part of ecosystems. We're all a part of people, places, things, experiences that have the ability to influence and inform how we think, feel, function, and navigate life. What I want you to think about is, in your life's journey, what is informing how you think, feel, function, and navigate life? And you'll find, if you do that, that 9 times out of 10, part of what might be creating discord in your relationship is that you and your partner, because of upbringing, because of lived experiences, because of trauma, whether it be addressed or unaddressed trauma, and a whole laundry list of things, you all are functioning in life very differently. So how you problem solve is different than how your partner problem solves. How you behave when your feelings are hurt is different than how your partner behaves when his feelings are hurt, and so on and so forth. One of the things that you will hear me say time and time and time and time again is that I am a human therapist, I'm a human life coach, I'm a human educator. I'm human. Why do I say that? Because I go through some of the same challenges in life, in love, in relationships that each of you do. The only difference is my approach to handling those things might be different. I'm at a place and space in my life where I choose to hold myself responsible and accountable for how I'm showing up in my relationship. I'll give you a prime example. Earlier in the week, I needed to take care of some business. I was on the phone with a representative from the bank who clearly was having a bad day. but my morning had not gotten off to a really great start, and I was totally admit I was tight. I was really, really tight, and I really was not in the mood for somebody who's supposed to behave professionally getting smart with me. And she kept getting smart with me. And I kept sort of redirecting, and, I kept going high when she would go low. And finally, I hung up on her. I just hung up on her because I was going to have to repent for coming out of my mouth and handling her in a way that would have purely been my flesh. And what do I say to you every single solitary week? If you are navigating life reacting, you have surrendered your power. And I am not big on surrendering my power to anybody. I don't want to be controlled, dominated, or anything by anybody else. I want to take responsibility and accountability for my behavior. So what did I do? I sat here for less than 5 minutes. I got myself together and I called the bank back. And the branch manager answered the phone, and I asked, could I speak to the representative? And she wouldn't get on the phone. And I said, you know what, ma'am? I said, I completely understand. I said, I'm calling back because it was unacceptable for me to behave unprofessionally because I viewed her as behaving unprofessionally to me. I said, that's not who I am in my core. That's not how I choose to behave. It was wrong. It was unacceptable. And I wanted to take this time to extend an authentic and genuine, sincere apology to her for my behavior. She still wouldn't get on the phone. Okay. I made an authentic attempt to make amends. So I asked the bank manager, I said, I completely understand. No harm, no foul. Would you please express my sincere apologies to her for my behavior? And the bank manager expressed appreciation for me taking ownership of the fact that just because she was behaving a certain way didn't mean that I had to respond in kind. And that was the end of the conversation. But that's what I mean when I talk about functioning, right? It's like you have to know who you are. You have to understand why you think, feel, function, and navigate life the way that you do, and know that if you and your partner are not on the same page regarding how that shows up, particularly in times of problems or distress, it can cause greater conflict in your relationship. The other thing that, and I think this one by far is one of the biggest ones, is what I've learned in doing this work all these years, and what I hear far too frequently, is folk are just walking around every day of their life harboring hatred, bitterness, and unforgiveness towards people that they profess to love and care about, on my day, right? People are just not willing to do the work that results in reconciling their differences, right? People are strong-willed, people are full of pride, people are bitter and resentful, and all of these things. But what I say to my couples is this behavior truly a reflection of the love that you say that you have for your partner? Because I'm on the outside looking in. I'm the neutral party. It looks like you hate each other. And don't get me wrong, I've been hurt. I mean, I believe most of us have at some point in time or another. There's no perfect person. There's no perfect relationship. So all of us have been hurt in our romantic relationships at some point in time or another. But do you sit in it? Do you stay there? Do you hold on to all of that toxic energy and just give lip service? Are you just saying that you want reconciliation, but you're really not willing to do the work so that you can not only reconcile the problems in your relationship, but also so that you can reconcile the personality differences that you all have? So how do you deal with this stuff? How do you make sense of this stuff in a way that can really be instrumental in helping you to have a stronger, healthier, more fulfilling and sustainable relationship? This is a topic that I could probably cover for a month straight, but one of the first tips that I want to give you is, and you hear me say this in different contexts all the time, The first step to recovery is admitting that you have a problem. People are so busy blaming and scapegoating and trying to make everything that's wrong in the relationship their partner's fault. You're blaming your partner for all of your unhappiness. Well, if you didn't do this, and if you didn't say that, and you. But there's two people in a relationship. And if you don't have control over anything else in the relationship, you have control over how you react to your partner. You have the ability to acknowledge that part of the strife and the discord and the tension that exists in your relationship is because of your differences. Has the thought ever crossed your mind? And we hear people talk about speak your truth, speak your truth, speak your truth. When was the last time you stopped and took into consideration that your partner may have a truth that's different than your own for a variety of reasons? Have you stopped to think about that? Your partner may have a truth for a variety of reasons that's different than your own. Have you taken into consideration that you use the fact that your mama was a scream, yeller, hooper, holler, cuss, and fusser, your daddy was a scream, yeller, hooper, holler, cuss, and fusser, that's just how I am. Or I want to put it in the context that my sister puts it in. She'll say, don't make my inner Paulette come out, right? And I jokingly, I say that too. Why? Because our mom is a pistol. Anybody that knows our mom personally knows that she can be a fire-breathing dragon. She'll burn down the whole joint if you get underneath her skin. And if you really, really, really set her off, you're not getting no apologies. There's going to be no remorse. You shouldn't have took me there. And it's going to be off to the races, and she's going to chew you up and spit you out and tear you a new behind for being instrumental in whatever it is that frustrated her to the point that she lost her cool with you. But that shouldn't be your excuse. You can decide to communicate calmly regardless of what you saw growing up. You can make a decision right now, here, today, that you're going to show up in your relationship as your adult self, emotionally and biologically. And rather than screaming, yelling, hooping, hollering, cussing, fussing, or shutting down, or stonewalling, or hurling insults, or being vindictive, spiteful, tit for tat, defensive, and all of those things that come up in toxic communication, you can make a conscious decision to start right now, here, today, to learn the necessary skills to communicate calmly and effectively, and to commit to discussing the situation or circumstance in a way that brings understanding and acceptance, even if that acceptance is we have to agree to disagree, to the relationship. One of the things that I find that's too frequently happening in the couples work that I do day in and day out is there's a lack of empathy. People are so problem focused. They're so busy, and I say this respectfully and as gently as I can, they're so busy romancing their victimization that they refuse to empathize with their partner. In other words, you refuse to put yourself in your partner's shoes. It's all about you. You're self-centered, you're self-absorbed, all about you. What about you? 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 And there's no consideration of how your partner feels. You want your partner to talk to you, but then when your partner starts talking to you, you cut him or her off. You want your partner to talk to you, but when they tell you how they really feel, you belittle, degrade, demean, or dismiss their feelings. What I say to my couples is the same thing I'm going to say to you. You don't necessarily have to understand or agree with your partner's feelings to respect them. The mere fact that I said, ouch, that hurts, should be enough for you to respect the fact that I say, ouch, that hurts. If you love me and I say, ouch, that hurts, why are you okay continuing to engage in a behavior that I have repeatedly conveyed hurts? Because what that suggests is either you're sadistic and you either blatantly don't care about your partner's feelings, or you're so emotionally unavailable or so emotionally disconnected that your partner saying, ouch, that hurts, is just flying over your head. You have to be willing to empathize. You have to be willing to humble yourself, because yes, it does take humility. You have to be willing to humble yourself and put yourself in your partner's shoes and ask yourself, if I were them and had to deal with me, or if I were them and had to deal with all of the other things that they're dealing with in their life, how might I feel in this situation? Can you love them enough to do that? Do you want a healthy, fulfilling, and sustainable relationship bad enough to do that? It really is your choice. You know, it's cliche and people say teamwork makes the dream work, right? But couples are supposed to be a team. Your differences don't have to be something that tears you apart. It can be something that unites you and brings you closer together. One of the things that I said to my client that I was in session with right before I came on live is, you know, people are in a relationship with their partner, but you're constantly, for many of you, engaging in controlling, overbearing, domineering behavior. You're constantly saying and doing things that are trying to modify your partner's behavior in such a way that in a lot of cases it looks very much like you're trying to turn them into you. Because you would drive that way, they must drive that way. Because they would park there, because you would park there, they have to park there. Because they take that route to work or to church or to the grocery store, you expect them to do it. And what ends up happening is you make the mistake of thinking that just because you would do it or feel it or say it or experience a certain way, that they have to do that. But you're not in a relationship with you. You're in a relationship with them. So if that's how you really feel, you might want to consider being single and just doing it your way all the time. Because there has to be space for autonomy in your relationship. I'm not talking about, you know, egregious things like, you know, your partner is engaging in substance abuse and it's eroding the relationship, or you know, I'm talking about minor things, insignificant things. And when it comes to major things, when it comes to those areas where the information that you're communicating to your partner really is for their greater good, there's a way to communicate that information that could be better received than you talking to them like a dog or a child, or judging or criticizing or belittling, degrading, or demeaning them because of a behavior that they're engaging in that you don't like. These things can be areas for growth where you all can grow and evolve and become a stronger, healthier relationship together. You know, many of us, probably most of us, have heard the saying that opposites attract. And to a degree, they do. I mean, clearly, I know that, you know, people are together who, they're like oil and vinegar, right? And it's oil and vinegar because, you know, one person's neat, the other person's sloppy. You know, one person is talkative, the other person isn't. There's all types of ways that this comes up, and it can be difficult to understand each other. But again, you're not in a relationship with yourself. You're in the relationship with a unique individual that you profess to love and care about. So why not capitalize on those differences and look for what I like to call the seed of equivalent benefit? In other words, instead of just looking at the differences through a lens of problem, what value can be added to you and the relationship because of our difference? The law of difference in this world that we live in can open you up to so many things. Think about it. It's, and you've probably heard people say this before. Would you want to live in a world where everybody in it was exactly like you? And I kid you not, in my career, I've literally only had a couple of people say, well, yeah, I'd like that. And I was like, yeah, right. Okay, whatever. People that are willing to be honest say no. No, I wouldn't, because we're whole beings. Mind, body, spirit, soul, thoughts and feelings and behaviors and all of the things. So being in a relationship with you, you're nitpicking about everything, you're whining, moaning, groaning, and complaining about everything. No matter what your partner does, it's never good enough, it's not right, you're just judgmental and critical. Imagine you having to experience that all day, every day. That's a recipe for misery. It's a recipe for misery. So what do? How do you get to a point where you can really find some resolve and some benefit to these personality differences? Talk about it. Describe, do a self-assessment. Identify what your personality traits are or what your personality styles are, and your partner do the same thing. And then play the match game. Have a conversation about what these differences are. And instead of just looking at them through the lens of being a problem, I dare you to look at how can these differences be leveraged to strengthen our relationship? How can these differences or these behavioral habits that we each demonstrate, how can we leverage them? Identify, because you're problem focused all the time, you're not solution focused, you might end up finding out that you have more similarities than there are differences. So I dare you to do that. Just both of you sit down, do that self-assessment, identify what your personality traits are, what your behavioral habits are, do a cross-check to say, okay, where do we differ? But also the solution-focused piece. Where are we similar? Where are we similar? And how can we capitalize on those similarities to strengthen our relationship? What are the differences between the personality traits and habits? So, for example, is one of you chronically sarcastic and the other one is chronically defensive? Are those things feeding off of each other and creating more problems? You have to be able to get to the root of why the personality differences are creating such a problem in the relationship. Solution-focused strategy. What personality differences have made the relationship stronger or better to date? Take your focus off of everything that's wrong and give yourself permission to look at some things that are right. Be honest. Do you really want to be in a relationship with yourself? If you can honestly say, you know what, I don't know, I can't imagine what that would be like, extend some grace and give your partner the grace to be authentically who they are. And if there are behaviors that truly are detrimental to the integrity, health, strength, and sustainability of the relationship, for example, like infidelity, or like lying, or like criminal activity, or like chronic employment instability, whatever. Like, identify those things. Those are some heavy things that need to be worked out. You need to have a discussion. And if you're not in a place and space in your relationship where you can have those healthy conversations, come see me. I'll mediate for you. I'll facilitate the conversation for you. I'll provoke your thoughts and help you to have a mature, responsible adult conversation. Just be mindful that if you work with me, I'm not going to allow you to scapegoat or blame or disrespect. Like, therapy is not going to be a war zone. So there's definitely boundaries and therapeutic criteria that we have to follow in order to ensure that it's a safe place and space that can be instrumental in strengthening your relationship and getting it to a stronger, healthier place. You have to take the focus off of your partner and look in the mirror. I know y'all are probably tired of hearing me say that. I think I say it every single solitary week because people are so focused on you, that they forget that they have these three fingers pointing back at them, right? What's the self-work? What things do you need to work on to help you to be a stronger, healthier, better version of yourself? Are you refusing to grow? Are you so entrenched in bitterness and resentment and pride and arrogance and unforgiveness and fill in the blank that you refuse to pursue a stronger, healthier, better version of yourself because you don't like the way that your partner points out your flaws? One of the things that is a major element in my marriage is that my husband and I have given each other permission to respectfully tell each other the truth. Respectfully tell each other the truth. We had a conversation yesterday and I was really annoyed with him. I was really, really annoyed. And he immediately got defensive and came at my neck, and I don't respond to that. I don't shut down. I just don't engage. I do not engage in battle. And I came in my office and started taking care of the things that I needed to take care of. And because he gets defensive, he can be really, really, really sarcastic. And sometimes it teeters on nasty. And I don't respond. I don't. I came in my office, I started doing my work and doing everything I came to do, and he came in and apologized. And what I conveyed was I stopped talking and removed myself from the equation because you asked me how I felt and why I was feeling the way I was feeling. And when I tried to tell you, you immediately got defensive, i.e., it wasn't an emotionally safe space for me to be vulnerable and transparent. So I'm not going to keep myself in harm's way. He acknowledged that even though I didn't attack him, he acknowledged that he flipped back to the old nature of defensive. But you have to know your partner. I've never, ever said or done anything in an attacking manner. So then the question becomes, is that your junk or is that my junk? You have to love each other enough to give your partner permission to tell you the truth in a healthy, loving, and respectful way. If you're not willing to grow and evolve into a stronger, healthier, better version of yourself in the relationship, why are you in it? Why are you in it? If you want to stay stagnant, because stagnation, you die. And no, you don't necessarily die a physical death, but you can certainly die an emotional death, and your relationship will die. Or you'll continue to be in the relationship and you're miserable and unhappy and stank and all of those things. So it's up to you. You get to decide, are each of you going to commit to taking the focus off of each other and rather commit to doing the self-work so that you can be a stronger, healthier, better version of yourself that you each reap the benefits of? Are you in a relationship with a partner whose personality traits are comparable to your parents or your primary caregiver? And you have unresolved childhood trauma because you grew up in a toxic or abusive or, environment. There was abuse, neglect, maltreatment, and you haven't dealt with that. And you married your dad, you married your mom. And let me just tell you, that goes both ways. There are men who marry women that act like their dad, and there's men who marry women that act like their mom. There's women who marry men that act like their dad, and there's women who marry men that act like their mom. For some of you, you may be dating someone that acts like your mom, dad, or a primary caregiver. Newsflash, that's your personal deficiency. That's your personal deficiency. Remember, each of us is the common denominator in all of our relationships. So if you keep finding yourselves in these relationships that are broken and conflictual, and you're finding yourself dealing with abusive or dysfunctional partners, you gotta do the self-work. You have to get to the root of why do you keep finding yourself in these toxic situations. You're the only common denominator in the relationship. So you have to look at what is going on with you that you have not addressed. In other words, you might have some mommy and daddy issues that are fueling you being in a relationship with a partner whose personality traits are compromising or exacerbating your mommy and daddy issues. But you have to be able to get to the root of that. And then the last thing that I want to tell you, and I know from doing this work that this is a stretch for some people, be intentional, be deliberate in positively commenting or acknowledging the differences between the two of you that are actually strengthening your relationship or in some way making your relationship better. That's your truth. That's your truth. That is, that's your bread and butter in a relationship context. You have power and control over no one but you. Take the focus off of your partner, look in the mirror, and ask yourself, am I behaving in a way that indicates that I truly want a healthy, loving, fulfilling, and sustainable relationship? Or am I behaving in a way that is keeping me in a cycle of broken and conflictual relationships because I have unresolved personal deficiencies and they're rearing their ugly head through the differing personality traits that my partner and I have? That's all I have. Y'all didn't ask me any questions tonight. You usually ask me questions and chop it up in the chat. Y'all could talk to me. Anyway, that's it. That's all I have. I hope that this was helpful for each of you. Look, folks, my heart's, I don't know you. 99.9% of you all that log in when I go through the analytics for the lives each week, I don't know you. So some of you I do, but the majority of you I don't know. And my heart's desire truly is my mantra, and that is to turn the adversities of my life into opportunities for each of you. I know what it's like to be in a relationship with someone that you love at times more than you love yourself, and to have it not be healthy or fulfilling or sustainable because of all of these other factors. I know that pain. I know that heartache. I know that suffering. And my commitment to each of you is that I will continue to do this work to ensure to the best of my ability that my hurt, my pain, my suffering are stepping stones for you to achieve a stronger, healthier, better you. I don't ever want you to think that I do these lives because I think that I've arrived or that I think that I have all the answers. I don't. But the answers that I do have, the formulas that I do share, I know that they work because I'm living them. I know that they work because there's evidence, there's proof, there's research, there's data that shows that one of the key ingredients to having a strong, healthy, sustainable, and fulfilling relationship is for your part of the formula to be healthy. And that's what I want to leave you with tonight. Commit to being the strongest, healthiest, best version of yourself that you can be. Regardless, you have to let your partner work on themselves. And yes, that might mean for some of you, you outgrow them. But cross that bridge when you come to it. Commit right now to waking up every day committed to and wholeheartedly invested in being a stronger, healthier, better you. Have a great weekend. I'll see you next week. Hit me up, DM me, email me, whatever you want. If you have any questions, particular topics you would like for me to address, I would be more than happy to honor your request and do that. Until then, be kind and loving to yourself and your partner. You're both worth it.